Well, let's speak to Jamil Jaffer, the founder of National Security Institute, a think tank which looks at threats to US national security. It'd be good to get your thoughts on this final meeting between the two men. What message do you think they will both be keen to get across?
Well, Jonathan, it's an important event, the third meeting in person between President Biden and President Xi. Obviously, coming at a big time for China, they're opening a multi-billion-dollar port in Peru that will open up Latin America to not just Chinese economic trade, but potentially Chinese warships, a concern for Joe Biden. But of course, we have an election that's taking place in the United States, a new president coming in who's already appointed or has said he's going to nominate a cabinet that looks to be tough on China, including folks like Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, Mike Waltz as the National Security Advisor, and Elise Stefanik as UN ambassador. So we'll see how this plays out over the next few hours and day or so down there in Peru.
Yeah, how concerned will China be about the Trump presidency? What measures do you think they're going to take in preparation?
Well, certainly they're going to be prepared for what President Trump has said he's going to do, which is to impose significant tariffs on China to address the issue of fentanyl coming into the United States, these precursors that are killing tens of thousands of Americans, to respond to the threats and the actual economic pressure that China is putting on not just the U.S., but our allies in the region. So we'll see that as a topic of conversation. And of course, there's the ever-present question about Taiwan, because China has indicated to its military forces, President Xi has, they need to be ready for an invasion in 2027. That would be during the Trump presidency. He's obviously concerned about that. The question is, will President Trump, like President Biden has said, put troops on the ground to defend Taiwan, or as Jake Sullivan, Biden's national security advisor, said, simply send weapons?
Well, certainly Trump is looking to fill his cabinet with China hawks, isn't he? Like Marco Rubio, Mike Waltz as well.
That's exactly right. But then we do have Tulsi Gabbard nominated as DNI, who seem to be more friendly towards China. So we'll see how this plays out. But I do think as a general matter, I think we'll expect the Trump administration to be significantly more hawkish on China than looking to do deals.
Do you think Beijing will make the most of the uncertainty when it comes to Donald Trump by forging ahead with other relationships? There's this new huge port, isn't there, in Peru, for example, that's been built by the Chinese? That's
exactly right. That port is critical, a multi-billion-dollar port. It's going to involve economic trade there in Peru, but also we'll see a potential for Chinese warships to dock at that port. So we'll see how that plays out as well.
Hard, though, for China to win the trust of US partners, isn't it, when they're saber-rattling, like you say, in the South China Sea. Not only that, China backing Putin over Ukraine.
That's right. Significant Chinese support to the effort in Ukraine there, with not just civilian capabilities, but potential military capabilities we're now hearing as well. And that's obviously an issue for the United States.
How would you summarize President Biden's attitude towards China over the last 4 years?
Well, look, President Biden has tried to find a middle ground towards China. He's indicated he wants to cooperate with them on things like climate change, which has obviously been a challenge because China doesn't have any incentive to cooperate on that front. At the same time, he's been fairly hawkish on trade and tariffs. And he's also been hawkish on Taiwan, although, again, his national security advisor has been less so it's hard to know how that plays out.
Do you think she has a preference, Biden or Trump? I mean, do you think he fears the Trump presidency more than he's struggled with the Biden one?
Well, I think certainly they both had a strong policy on China, but I do think he fears Trump more in the sense that Trump was more hawkish during his time in office, and Trump has been aggressive on the campaign trail. And finally, Trump is less predictable than Joe Biden, and I think that's what you'll see out of a Trump presidency, and I think that's what President Xi actually is concerned about as well.
And Jamil, just finally, we've talked a lot about tariffs. We're continuing to talk about them. Do you think he will impose them immediately when he comes in?
Well, look, I think that's an interesting question. I think that the reason why President Trump is unlikely to impose significant tariffs on China right out of the box is because those tariffs would obviously create inflation in the United States. And so what we're likely to see is some amount of tariffs, probably on the higher end luxury goods, semiconductors and the like. But I doubt you'll see tariffs across the board, which President Trump did talk about in the campaign. But I think it's unlikely. President Trump is probably pretty concerned about inflation in the United States, less likely to do broad across the board heavy tariffs.
OK, we appreciate your time. Thanks for keeping going despite your lights playing up. We do appreciate it. Jamil Jaffer, founder of the National Security Institute. Thanks very much.